Oh, we love to talk about ourselves, don't we? Here's one of the most important things you can do. Ask questions about others. And we think we know how to ask questions, but there's a difference between sort of asking questions and asking powerful questions, and when to use those questions, and how often to have questions. So let's explore that a little bit. Asking questions. The importance of asking questions, allowing us to connect with another person because we're showing that we care and that we're concerned, or that we want to be curious and get to know the other person better. So we've all heard this. There's closed-ended questions and there's open-ended questions. Closed-ended questions usually generate a one-word response, and open-ended questions invite the person who is getting the question to explore a little bit more. Closed-ended questions. Is it hot or cold in here? It's hot. Okay. Are you hungry? Yes. Would you like a job? Yes. So open-ended questions are things like, tell me a little bit more about how you're feeling today. Or, wow, I'd love to hear more about your vacation. What happened next? Like those stories invite, or those questions invite stories. Things like, what did you do at that point? How did that work for you? How do you feel about that? How might be a little more important than why. Why sometimes it's like, why did you do that? Right? It sounds a little defensive, and then they're like, maybe they don't want to share. But if you're like, how did you come to that decision? Right? That sounds a little bit lighter. So why can work, but you want to be careful with it depending on the situation. How questions are really good. Tell me more about that is really good. Closed-ended questions, though, have a space. And this is where I might defer a little bit from what other people talk about, but I love closed-ended questions because closed-ended questions can invite you into open-ended questions later. And they can be simple as, did you get your homework done? Yes or no? Well, now you have an invitation to ask another question. Did you hear back from the doctor? Did you get to sleep okay last night? There are all of these different questions you can ask that prompt a response. One of my favorite in terms of like business and sales, if you're in sales, is, hey, did you get the information I sent you? And then if they say no, you can have an open-ended question a little bit more about, oh, hey, can you make sure we have the email right? Or what can we do to make sure we get the information to you? If they say yes, then you say, great. Is there a chance to look at it? Maybe there's another closed-ended question. Yes, I have. Oh, great. Let's explore that. Are you open to exploring that? Now there's another yes, closed-ended question. So you can actually ask closed-ended questions to get to open-ended questions. So there's an importance for both closed-ended and open-ended questions. We don't ask enough questions. A good communicator will ask questions 2 to 3 times more than an average person. And they're going to ask a question on an average of every 2 minutes. Now, some of those questions can come in quick succession. Did you get my email? Have you read it yet? Now there's an open-ended question. Those are 3 questions that can kind of happen fairly quickly. My encouragement to you is, when you want to make a statement, can you turn that into a question? When you want to make a statement, can you turn that into a question? If you do that, you open up dialogue and connection with other people on a deeper level. When we ask questions, that builds connection and it helps us become more memorable. When somebody leaves a conversation, they didn't go, oh my gosh, that person talked about themselves so much, I really like them. Usually what they say is, oh my gosh, that person was really interested in me. I really like them, I want to talk to them again. So ask those powerful questions. Here's why some people are afraid of asking questions, including myself, even though I know this not to be true. We don't ask questions because we feel like we're losing control when we ask questions. But actually the opposite is true. The more questions we ask, the more in control we are. The more we can move the narrative where we want it to go by asking questions. Now we don't want to do this in a manipulative way, but asking questions allows the other person to feel seen and heard and connected, and we get control on where that goes by asking the appropriate questions. Tell me more about that. What happened then? Were you scared? Did you like this? What did you do afterwards? What was your recovery like? How did you finally get home? Like all of these, you're controlling, they're telling the story, but you're actually controlling the narrative of their story. So it's very important to not be afraid to ask questions. In fact, ask more questions and be okay with that. And I would even say, challenge myself, to say, when you can make a statement, instead ask a question. Wow, that's a really good deal. How about, wow, what do you think of this deal? Right? It's hot out. What do you think of the temperature right now? That must have been so hard for you. You can say, how hard was that? How did you feel about that? When you have a statement and you can turn it into a question, that's empowering, because you're controlling the narrative, you're influencing the narrative in a good way, but you're also allowing them to feel seen and heard. And when they leave, then they're going to remember you as somebody who really connected with them, because they were free to talk about themselves and not just listen to you talk about yourself. Here's a great sort of overall catching question, which I mentioned before, which isn't necessarily really a question, but we phrase it so it's like a question, which is, tell me more about that. If you ask that question, that will allow the conversation to continue on a deeper level. So, tell me more about that. There's open-ended, closed question. How would you, why can I not think of an open-ended question? Oh my gosh. I'm pausing for dramatic effect because I'm going to talk about pausing in another video. And the reality is I just completely spaced on the other question I was going to ask.